value calculation. That number is $1 million. Then you say, okay, what are we going to save for doing this? You're going to save a little over $5 million. So that's what the numbers are. What you're looking at is a cash flow, and it shows cash in, cash out. You have to present value that back, and that present value number tells you, in essence, what you're going to pay to do this deal.
What I'm looking at is a title that says savings.
Right.
Which refers to me money you're going to save. When we get to the bottom line, it says a minus $5,435,523 and a nickel.
But you have to present value that number back. That number tells you exactly what the total cost is to do a restructuring. And again, you say to yourself, what is it going to cost me to do a restructuring, which is $1 million. What am I saving by doing this? It's $5 million. And that's where you do your cost benefit analysis. But again, let me go back to my initial point. Those are raw numbers, and there has to be a presentation behind those numbers which help you as a board understand what these numbers are saying. And that's typically what we've done historically for the county. What happens is that we sit down with a financial advisor, we go over a structure, then we take those numbers and put them into plain speak. And plain speak will give you an idea of the way I explained it, which shows you the present value calculation.
Okay, anybody?
Are you saying you have not sat down with the financial advisor to
I don't know who the financial advisor is.
They call?
I don't know who the financial advisor is going to be on this transaction. Now, I've sat down with your current financial advisor, and we've had a conversation with staff, and Tony Gaylor was in the meeting, and we actually spoke about this, how there needs to be everyone needs to sit down and get an understanding on the numbers and put it into a simplified presentation for the board.
If I can continue with my question, Mr. Smith.
Go ahead.
My thought. I know Mr. Calhoun has something to say, but I just want to finish his thought that I had on my mind. It would appear to me, as I look at this, that the initial influx of money that the county gains in the next 3 years for spending, it's going to be offset significantly with the next board that comes in. The one is not the one that just got elected, but the one that's next up to be elected. That's when they have to start repaying this back. To include what appears to me to be in 2028 a $3,012,000 increase to the bond payment, and in 2030 a $3,106,000 increase to the bond payment. I would agree that we need to get this into plain speak so that everyone understands it. But all this is concerned is the restructuring of current bonds.
Correct.
Because, and it's part of this discussion as we were going, I think it was starting to blend in that this restructuring and the $50 million figure that came up were all being, we're going to be placed into one motion or one basket. And I think we got two different issues here that we need to kind of delve through. And trying not to muddy that water. I would throw out a suggestion to the board. I mean, most of this is going through the 4th district. I'm very interested in this also. But I think that we have an obligation to the people that we represent to be able to go to a homeowners meeting and in 5 or 10 minutes explain to them the financing involved so that we all know what we're doing, what we're talking about. I'll throw this out that, and just for opinion of the board, not an emotion, just as an opinion of thought of the board. Is it conceivable for a subcommittee of the board to form? 2 board members, county administrator, the attorney, the financial people that are involved, and that attorney, to sit down and to try to come down and hash through the real specifics of these issues, and then bring it back to the board as a recommendation as to the path we should go. I can see us continuing up here battling back and forth, arguing over who said what when, and never really getting to the point of accomplishing it. We've got to get to a point where we not only are moving forward, and I think we are moving forward, by the way. The acquisition of land is part of the process that federal government requires us to do, there's a way that we do it. I think we are moving forward. But let's not rush into something with a $50 million obligation, and I still don't have a number of what that obligation will be back to the county in its budget in the future over 25 years, for example. What I'm reading here on this paper, what you're explaining are two different things, at least in my mind right now. It continues. The more we get into the dollars of this, the more confusing it gets. However, before we vote, I think each of us should be able to go in front of that homeowners association and be able to explain it. There's another avenue I don't think any of us have approached here. Are there any grants available for large infrastructure projects that go on? And has our grant administrator looked into that to see if there are anything? Have we looked as a board at every available resource before we move into a $50 million figure? And is that the right figure? Is the right figure 96 million? But we got, Mr. Smith has alluded to, earmarks are gone. I don't believe they're ever going to. But
I agree.
But if they are, we can't get the money there.
Come back out.
If we can't get the money from Washington, yes, we got to come up with it from somewhere. I agree.
Right.
But what exactly do we need to come up with? These are the important points that I think that we need to be able to explain. And I really feel like that, you know, at least from a viewpoint on one issue, let's take the $50 million, and not even knowing at this point what we have to add, what we have to come up with in our budget, or what we have to do away with in our budget, in order to make that known, is a significant piece of this pie that we should have. So I throw that out for the board to kind of chew on that a little bit and see what you think.
Ms. Calvin.
Mr. Fisher, you're right, there are no more earmarks. While you were away overseas, we received $1.25 million from the Federal Highway Administration to assist with the construction of the project. And they were elated by the fact that there had been some movement and some activities excuse me, on the corridor. Currently, our Capital and Human Development Officer is researching and looking for, at least he's been directed to research and look for other grant opportunities. Whether there's some out there, I don't know. But certainly over the years, we have been researching for those additional funds. Also, while you were gone, we have had, again, many discussions regarding the financing of the project. And up until this Monday, it was the consensus that we would look at requesting $50 million. It will not do the entire project, but it will do both ends of the project. Then when funds, money start coming in from the economic development of the project, we will use those funds to bring the corridor to completion. Also, part of the funds for the right-of-way acquisition will be refunded back to the county once that process has been completed. So those will be additional dollars. In order to receive something from an investment, you're going to have to give up something, or else you're not going to reap any benefits. I guess I'm befuddled, but because we looked at different plans, and part of my motion was going to be to name a financial advisor. We cannot, if we don't name a financial advisor, then we're not going to get a confirmation on the preliminary information that has been presented this morning. Are you going to, I guess I don't understand if this board is saying get a financial advisor to confirm this information without paying that person? Is anybody out there willing to do that? Anybody willing to confirm all of this information without getting paid? I don't see any hands. So I guess it's still, I don't understand what you're asking. And I see you saying all these figures correct. We're not going to know if they're correct until we hire a financial advisor.
Well, I had no opposition at all against the financial advisors who walked through the process. But we're not going to roll wax.
No, we could change. I mean, if we find, if information is presented to us that is questionable, then you can vote to take action not to move forward. You actually, at a later date, can vote to not to even construct the corridor. My point is, we got to get the information verified.
Well, let me ask this, and I'll be finished. Is this the figure that we want to start with? Do we have? I said again, have we acquired all the information that's needed?
Mrs. Smith,
Okay.
you know that we got to get
Mr. Graham, and then we'll let go and let you all decide.
I think what we need to do, Mr. Smith, is we just need to call the question. We just need to go ahead and vote. I think everybody knows that we need to do the project as far as it has to be financed in some particular way. But my question is more or less a fundamental question is why are we in such a big hurry? For the first question. And my second question goes to Mr. Williams, whether or not you have any information regarding the reauthorization of the highway bill, safety loop, that might provide some type of money. Do you have any information on that? Okay. And last question is to the board attorney regarding whether or not we actually, or do we have to have a referendum on this amount of money if we decide to do this?
I would need to research that issue, and Mr. Gaylor has been hired by the board to address the funding issue, so that might be a question that should be referred to him.
Okay, do we have to have citizen participation as to whether or not we should do this before we vote on this or before we make this particular type of decision? Does anybody have that answer?
Mr. Gaylor?
When you say citizen participation, what do you mean?
Such as in a referendum or any particular type of meeting with citizens or get their input that was suggested?
That's different from asking whether it's a referendum. There wouldn't be a referendum required on the front. There's a protest period and all those other types of things come into play, but automatically no.
It would be a no protest bond vote, is that right?
There is a provision within the proposed resolutions that would allow for a protest if there's going to be one, but it would be a significant number of people that have to come up with a petition and do a number of different things, go to the Chancery Court and challenge a validation and all kinds of things.
Mr. President, in reference to Supervisor Graham's question regarding safety loop funds, Mr. Graham, if you recall, the reason that we have gone to Washington was to tap into some of those funds if there are any available. And we have received some safety loop funds. And the reason we have gone to Washington was to ask our congressional delegation to put us in their budget for the next year. Any federal opportunity that's there, believe me, we have tapped into it. Our congressional delegation is more aware of where the funds are than we are. And each time we have gone to Washington, they have assisted us in getting some of these funds. They make the appropriations from the safety loop funds. They make the appropriation. Our congressional delegation makes the appropriations from the safety loop funds. They make the appropriations from the ICE-T funds and etc. So it's not anything that we can directly we can go to Congress to ask, but Congress has to make the appropriations, is what I am saying. There is not a tendency to rush with this project. However, because of the market, the environment of the market is the reason that I was attempting to move forward. But there is no rush. And Mr. Gaylor, can you explain what the environment is in regards to the marketing conditions, please?
Marketing conditions with regard to
Why we want to take advantage of moving forward this year versus next year?
well, there's always certain uncertainty that's involved whenever you propose to take on something like this. I mean, you have the information that I received from the various financial professionals that have been consulted on this project was that it's certainly the environment that we are presently in is a favorable environment. The environment that you will be in tomorrow is uncertain. When I say tomorrow, a couple of months from now, I don't know, theoretically. But nevertheless, the information that I received was that we are in the present favorable bond market today. If you would like to ask that question to any of the folks that are in the room, they're here as well.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion. And my motion is to move forward in naming a financial advisor and to look at the information that has been presented, the restructuring component and the Byron corridor component. Everything remains the same except for authorizing the issuance of, since this board is concerned about the information that has been provided. But we cannot move forward until we do get it verified, but we must name a financial advisor. I'm going to defer to the board attorney. Since this is a professional consulting piece, can we move forward in naming a consultant, a financial consultant this morning?
My understanding of the law is that this would be a service contract, and the board is authorized to hire services for specialized industries such as financial advisor.
Okay.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
The board answers a really good one. Okay, as I understand, the motion is simply for this board to hire a financial advisor, which has already been recommended by
No.
Taylor and...
No. They have not recommended anyone.
You mentioned coming in earlier that we needed to have a financial advisor to run over this.
Well, we have, I won't tell you what the complexity of it is, but anyway, we have two financial advisors here this morning. We have Mr. Porter Bingham, which I have not spoken with. We have Mr. Edward Norwood, whom I have spoken with because of his interest in this project. But as far as getting, as the board attorney said, we do not have to. We can go ahead and select a financial advisor. So on the restructuring piece, I do know that Mr. Porter Bingham would be involved because of the requirements of the Mississippi Bank, in that he goes back, and this is just in my layman terms, which could be wrong, but that he goes back and confirm the original information that had been submitted regarding the issuance of our bonds, our bonds that were issued back in the past. Mr. Gaylor, Mr. Bingham, you might want to explain what it is I'm trying to do today so that nobody will go out being misled by what I'm saying.
You want me to refund?
Do we have a motion on the floor?
I don't know.
No, I have not made one yet.
So that's a question part of the question I had also.
I still don't see the amount of information but go ahead, that's needed for them to look at here before me this morning, but go ahead.
I don't know of any rule that would require. Excuse me, my name is Porter Bingham. My firm is not Patent. I'm not aware of the rule, Tony, that you are referring to that would require me to be a part of any transaction that the county would choose to do without the board authorizing that participation. I mean, there may be something in a document somewhere that you might be referring to that you get that interpretation, but I'm not aware of it. Well, you mentioned it, but I'm just not aware of that particular
Mr. Gay, would you
rule.
explain what I'm trying to do with this?
As it was expressed to the board and members as well as Mr. Bingham, there are provisions within the previous documents that were done several years ago by financial professionals and by attorneys that were involved several years ago on previous bond issues that speak to the involvement of the Mississippi Development Bank's financial advisors with regard to calculating and making calculations on bonds and series and different types of things that have to do with those bonds from previous issues. And they were contacted, and they basically stated that it was preferred and recommended even that you talk with the previous professionals that you had involved with regard to that, because calculations had to be made based on something, and their familiarity was going to get us further down the road with regard to the restructuring issue. So that's why we felt that it was necessary to recommend or discuss talking with your previous financial advisors with regard to that matter.
Okay, and the environmental reporting piece does not have that requirement attached to it.
No.
But let me ask this question. With considering combining the two issues, would that require that same FA work on both projects, or we could name another FA for that purpose?
As Mr. Bingham has stated, I know of no such requirement.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make a motion to hire a financial advisor, to hire Mr. Porter Bingham to work on the restructuring piece. And I would like to hire Mr. Edward Norwood to work on the Byron Clinton Corners piece.
I was of the opinion that we were looking at putting both pieces together. So where are we here?
Well, look, from my perspective, and I've served as your financial advisor for many years, and the debt portfolio that's in place right now has the structure that it has primarily because of my leadership. I am of the opinion that, first of all, the county only there are two types of bonds outstanding, which both happens to be backed by its general fund. So you have industrial revenue bonds, which this doesn't really qualify for, and you have general obligation bonds, which if you're going to issue debt to build a corridor project, whatever the project is, unless there is a revenue attached to it, an airport or a hospital or something that revenues can be generated to substantiate the debt service, your ability to repay the debt service, then you're going to issue general obligation bond. So if that is the case, my argument in my discussions with Tony Gaylor in this last week has been that it is inefficient to have two different issuances if in fact, so closely together, if you have two projects that you're going to have to finance in a short period of time, because a couple of different, it's just more efficient to issue more debt as it relates to the leverage that you have in the market in terms of pricing. If you got two transactions that are separate, you have two different sets of professionals, which seems to be the direction that this discussion is going. So you're going to pay, twice for what really you didn't need to pay for, but once, and it simplifies the process for the board and from the structuring standpoint and getting the transaction executed. That's my position on it.
So your position is one person?
My position is one
Two actions
transaction.
are good. That's what's
My position is one transaction.
That's what I was going to recommend, one transaction. Like I said, the reason the two came to be was because I initially had sought help in getting the court finance, and then I came back and asked for assistance in working with the county to bring in additional revenue. So that's how the two ended up being separated. If it's best to go ahead and combine the two, then I have no problem with that.
Then what has to happen is that you got to come back with a different scenario to be looked at. Anyway, let's move forward. Otherwise, we'll be here.
I'm going to, okay, well, I'll make a motion.
You make the motion, there was no second.
I know, but I'm going to come back. I said I'm going to make a motion.
You actually made the motion.
Oh, well, since there was no second, let me make another motion.
The motion was to move forward and name a financial advisor, Porter Bingham for the restructuring piece of Ed Norwood for the court.
What I'll do, since the reason.
Before we move to another motion?
No. It was no. I was interrupted when we were talking, so that's why I was thinking that. If you recall, I was interrupted, and so that's why I didn't think I actually carried it through. So I'll make another motion.
Can I ask a question before we, I need to find out, before we make, if we have a motion on the floor, don't we have to dispose of that particular motion before you can even amend another motion?
It appears she's withdrawn the motion.
I withdrew it.
Okay.
And what happened, I was interrupted as I was making a motion.
All right.
Okay, this is the motion. That we move forward in hiring Edward Norwood, and if Edward, you would come up and explain your talk about your credentials, please. That we